I'd like to open the public hearing for the appropriation. Not yet? You took. I'd like to call this meeting of this city council meeting to order. I got to call the roll. You told me the wrong thing. Somebody told me the wrong thing.
Well, Commissioner Frierson.
I'm just messing.
Commissioner McDowell.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes. Here. Mayor McKinney.
Almost here. I'd like to open the public.
Agenda changes?
Are there any agenda changes?
Pledge allegiance.
Can we start this again?
Is there something in the air?
Could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Brenner, would you lead us?
Thank you, sir. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
I think we ought to pray. Pastor Ken Fielding, would you come forward and lead us in prayer this evening? And pray that your mayor gets this agenda straightened out here.
That I can do.
Please do.
I want to share with you from James chapter 5, which says, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth. Be patient about it until it receives the early and the latter rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand." You know, I just want to encourage you guys that are here and serving in this capacity, because sometimes it's a long, tedious, hard row, and it takes patience. And I trust that the Lord will bless you and give you that patience to continue to work things through until you see the fruit of your labor. So let's pray. Father, I thank you that we can call upon you. We do come to you tonight in the name of Jesus. And God, we do ask for your wisdom and your guidance in this room. And God, even as the mayor has asked for clarity of thought and wisdom, God, I pray that you grant it to him tonight and give him peace of heart and mind tonight, God, as he leads this meeting. And Lord, I do pray blessing upon this council. Lord, I pray that you would indeed grant them patience and diligence and faithfulness, Lord. God, that they would be able to see things through and that there would be good resolutions to all the things, God, that are on the docket, Lord, all the things that they must address. Just bless this council tonight, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
And as started last city council meeting, I would just like to offer a moment of silence for first responders throughout our country and our community, as well as our military. Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any agenda changes? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Frierson.
Aye.
Commissioner McDowell.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmes.
Aye.
Mayor McKinney.
Aye. At this time, since I was premature before, I'd like to open the public hearing for the appropriation ordinance. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Administrator Nabel.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate the enthusiasm to get to our appropriation ordinance here and the patience to get through it. So, real quick, this is just what the appropriation ordinance is. It's required by Illinois state statutes for pretty much every municipality, but we have to adopt it by July 31st for our fiscal year. That's May 1st, 19 through April 30th, 2020. That's what we don't run calendar year. That's what we run. The appropriation ordinance is basically just our legal authority to spend funds. So we have a budget that we use internally that is much more conservative than what's actually on the appropriation ordinance, because we don't want something to come up later, an emergency, potentially some grants to do infrastructure projects, things of that nature, where we're going to expend over and above what we have in our budget, but we don't want to pass on those opportunities and not be able to legally expend those funds. So what we do is later on tonight we'll be adopting a budget which is more conservative than this. But this, like I said, this is our legal authority to spend funds that we have to file with the county. So there are copies of the appropriation ordinance in the back next to the agendas if anyone would like a copy of it. It's 15 pages of detail. I won't go through all that. I'll spare that. We've been talking about budgets since actually December of last year, so we've gone through a lot of this stuff. I will hit a couple of highlights, and then I'll go over what the total appropriation is. People who have heard me talk about tax levies and tax revenues. I mean, nobody likes talking about taxes, we know that. But one of our biggest challenges that we have is pension requirements. Everyone hears about it, pension funding. We're required to submit to the pension funds a minimum every year. There's an amount that our actuary says this is what you need to put in to get fully funded by a future date. Then there's also a minimum requirement that the state says this is what you have to put in. We've always put in that minimum because we just haven't been able to afford the actuarial recommendation. Unfortunately, the downside of that is if you're putting less than what you need to be fully funded, next year that's going to compound and you're going to have to put in, your minimum is going to go up by a little bit more because you shorted that prior year, compounding interest, all that fun stuff. So what's happened is, in this fiscal year, but it's been prior years too, our minimum pension requirement went up by about $360,000 that we had to put in. So even when we max the levy and you get, let's say, $250,000 of new revenue, I have to put $350,000 more into pension funds. So if I get $250,000 in, but I have to put $350,000 more in, I'm losing $100,000 for operations. And that's what's happened over years to our general fund revenues. 5 years ago, we had about $1.5 million from our tax levy to use for general operations. Now we're at about $900,000. So we lost $600,000 of revenue a year that we could use for salaries, police, fire, infrastructure, because that pension contribution has come up. And like I said, that's a legal requirement. There's nothing we can do about that. So when we look at the budget later and also the appropriation ordinance, we worked really hard. All the departments did, all the unions did, a lot of concessions, a lot of negotiations to basically keep our budget flat from the prior year. Even with increased costs, even with repairs needed, the only increase, we have an increase in revenue of about $400,000. We also have a total increase in expenses of about $400,000. And that's due to the pension income that has to come in from the tax levy and the expense that we have to put into it. Everything else is pretty flat. On a line-by-line item, they go up and down. But that's kind of the highlight of the budget overall. He said we're basically down to minimum on the expenses as far as what we can do. There's only so much you can do with fuel, paper clips, repairs to vehicles, things like that. You're at a minimum. You're not going to get a whole lot from there. The other 80% of our budget is salary benefits. And like I said, we've done a lot with negotiations and non-union employees taking 0%, paying more to their insurance, renegotiating health insurance, carving out sections to get savings on pooled health insurance. So we've taken a lot of creative ways to kind of keep this spending flat. So I'll be happy to go into any detail that anyone has, and we'll go into a little more when we talk budget. We can look at specific line items. But what I would recommend is if you look at page 13, What we're looking to do is approve the total appropriations for the year of $42,228,966. So that, once we get to that point, that will be the motion for approval, but I turn it back over to the council for the rest of the public hearing.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about the appropriation ordinance?
It kind of more relates to the budget, but David, you said there was an increase of about $400,000, but how much of that is pension?
361,000.
So the vast majority.
Yes.
And so it looks like I'd have to ask this question. The only way we're going to be able to resolve this pension is through pension reform through the state?
Yeah, we've been hearing about it forever, probably, as long as I've lived in Illinois, they've been talking about pension reform, and we're still talking about it. Until that's addressed, our legal obligation and what we have to do per state statute, per the state constitution is what we're doing. There's well over 200 municipalities that are actually on a list for not making their minimum pension requirements, which the pension funds can actually intercept revenues from the municipality because of that. That creates, and some have done it, it creates a downward spiral. It's a mess. We are not on that list. We have been making our legally required contributions, but the minimum does continue to grow over time.
And this is just not an Illinois issue. This issue kind of presents itself in just about every state in the United States. The pension reform
Municipal
is
pension funds all across the country that are having issues.
Any other questions or comments from our commissioners? No. Any of the members of the public have any questions or comments? Mr. McLemore?
Page 7, $17,900 for the train station. What is that money for? Page 7, this train station, $17,900.
So we contractually have a obligation to maintain, to upkeep, repairs for broken windows, camera systems, things like that. So the maintenance of the buildings and grounds for the station, we have a contract with Metro for the upkeep of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? If not, I'd like to adjourn the public hearing and start our regular council meeting. Item number 6, citizen comments. W.C. Bremner from Zion, Illinois.
Mayor McKinney, honorable sirs, gentle ladies, I am W.C. Bremner here in Zion. Because of the kerfluffle the last couple of months regarding the expansion of the landfill, I brought in an article that was in today's Chicago Sun-Times newspaper titled, "Why Throwing Plastic in the Trash Might Make More Sense Than Recycling It." I bring this in for your perusal and your interest. It suggests, only a suggestion, that it is, in today's world, it is more economical to just crush plastic down and bury it rather than trying to recycle it. That does exclude paper products, tin cans, and particularly aluminum, but it makes more sense, according to this article, to just crush plastic and throw it in a landfill. Have I permission to approach, sir?
You certainly do. Thank you for that. We'll definitely copy this and disseminate that for our council members to look at.
I thank you for your time, your courtesy, and your attention to this matter. Permission to stand down, sir.
Permission granted. Thank you for your comments. Tim Stamphill?
Tim Stanfill. I own the house at 2014 Elam. Good evening. Earlier this week, I talked to Rich, but I had replaced a couple windows on my house back in April. And this week, I got a letter in the mail, and then for noncompliance for a building permit, and then I got a $750 ticket with that, which I was under the impression that replacing a window did not need a building permit, and I did not look this up ahead of time before I did the windows, but I did after I got the ticket, which, as you can imagine, elevated my blood pressure when you open the letter and you only got a couple $100 in the job, and I got a $750 noncompliance ticket. But from the Section 10.4 in the Zion Code, it says, "It shall be unlawful unless a permit is first obtained for any person to excavate for any building, foundation, or footing, or to erect, move, alter, remodel any building or structure or any part thereof in the city. Applications for such permits shall be made in writing to the building department upon blank forms to be supplied by such building department and shall be accompanied by plans and specifications." I did no altering. It was a maintenance item. The windows on this house were 100 years old, and I replaced them. And I broke any part of that ordinance. Also, on the Zion website, if you click on, "Do you need a permit?" the first two paragraphs state, "It is tough to whittle down a list of contractors for your major remodeling projects unless they eliminate themselves by waving huge red flags. One of those red flags is you don't need a permit when you really do. Another is when they tell you to go to the building department and get it yourself. That's terrible advice unless you're talking about a simple decorating project, routine repairs, or maintenance. You don't need a building permit in those cases. You probably need a permit if the project requires foundation work, like pouring piers for a deck, additions, alterations in the framing, like installing a sliding glass door, or changing the use of the space, like converting a garage to a spare bedroom. If the contractor isn't sure you need a permit, that's just another red flag." On both those being on the Zion website, the one says, if you need a permit, I did none of those. I did not change the framing of the building. And in the other one, it's a maintenance item. Rich was kind enough that if I get a permit, he was willing to drop the non-compliance ticket. But at what point, where is maintenance and where does a building permit start? I feel like I'm getting nickeled and dimed. You know, I get to the point where there's 3 more windows that I would eventually like to replace. But if I got to come spend $55 every time I need to do a minor maintenance, I get to the point where I don't want to do anything, and it keeps me from doing something. Those windows were 100 years old. I put in current windows that meet the energy code, but I feel like I'm getting penalized for doing something that, one, I felt like I did nothing wrong. I get ignorance of the law is not an excuse, but even when I read the law, I feel like there was no negligence on my part, but yet I feel like I'm being penalized.
Well, sorry to hear that. You feel like you're being penalized. Director Ironson, would you like to comment further on this?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, we've always required permits for replacement of windows for a couple of reasons. One, we figure it's an update, an upgrade to protect the residents. We do come out and inspect the windows after they're installed, make sure they're installed properly, insulated properly, meet the proper energy code. We have to adhere to the current energy code. So there's multiple reasons why we require permits for windows.
But to both those two reasons, one, it's always been done that way. That's not a reason to me. I mean, a lot of things have always been done that way, and they've always been done wrong. So just to say that, you know, it's been that way before Rich was in office, I mean, I don't see how that is a legitimate reason. And two, I get the energy codes, but just because you're replacing a window, like, because I touch that window, if I have to change the energy code, I'm in construction. I own an electrical contracting business in Zion. I'm in the trades every day. If that's the case, where if you touch something and you have to update the code, if I replace the light bulb in here or a ballast, are you telling me I would have to make this room energy code compliant? We would have to go through and put occupancy sensors or vacancy sensors in. You know, at some point, I get it, there's an energy code, but I mean, when is minor maintenance? Minor maintenance is my question.
I would consider that maintenance what you described, but we were mandated by the state to adhere to the energy code.
So if we change the light and I touch that, you would pay an electrician to come in here and update the energy code for the electricity.
I don't think you have to take it to that extreme. I would consider that maintenance, changing a lamp, changing a switch.
But again, see, I consider replacing a 100-year-old window maintenance. I mean, that's where I know we talked, and I mean, we had an okay conversation. You know, there was no animosity, but I'm on one side, you're on the other, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Sorry for the sidebar there.
No
Not that
problem.
we weren't listening, but I know that these issues are always really difficult in going through the website and looking at everything, and we try to be considerate of our citizens. And if there's an issue, I'm sure Commissioner Holmes, Director Ironson, myself, and our legal department will take a look at the ordinance, and look at the code, and see if there's anything that can be done.
Director Ironson, how long are the permits good for?
You have to start within 6 months or complete in a year.
Okay, so if he was to come for one, he would have 6 months to complete windows within that time period?
6 months to start or 1 year to complete.
Okay. So I understand your point about nickel and diming. So it's kind of a halfway in terms of we don't want to deter residents from improving their properties, to your point. But if there are some legal requirements or things that the building department feels standards that need to be kept, I mean, that's kind of a meet in the middle of, you know, you pay the $55 for the permit, and then you complete that work over the course of that year.
I understand that. I just feel like it's for maintenance issues. There's when I read that ordinance and
I agree with you. So I think to the mayor's point, in terms of
there's no clarity.
There does need to be some review of
The
how pointed
definition.
that is when folks
The definition of what is considered maintenance and
because
what
that
is
is
considered
very
rehab.
subjective, to your point.
I mean, if I change a light in a house, does that, you know, that's you could consider that altering your house. Well, according to that would be, you know, a building. I mean, at some point, there's just got to be some type of clarity, and then to get penalized for it on top of it, just flip my lid. I mean, to people like.
Say that Director Ironson has agreed to waive the ticket if you get a permit.
That was before this meeting tonight. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's still good, but yeah, I don't want to put words in his mouth. But yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. I was thankful that when I came into, you know, again, I'm in the trades. I've dealt with Rich for many years, and I mean, we've gotten along great, at least on my part. So, I mean, I was thankful for that, but it's still, I just feel like you're being penalized. I mean, the day I got that letter, it was like, you know what, I wished I would have never done that. I should have just left the windows in there, you know, and that's not the right attitude. But if I got to pay, you know, the windows for that house were like $113, but if I do one a year and I got to come pay $55 for every $100 window, it feels like you're being penalized and nickel and dimed, and that's what I'm here to voice my opinion on. So, I mean, I don't know if there's another way to clarify it, or, I mean, ideally, I'd like that just to be a maintenance issue, but, I mean.
I think that part has been heard by the council. I mean,
Right.
You obviously have talked with Director Heinsohn about it and are able to come to an agreement. But you have brought this issue to the council, and the mayor has agreed to look into it.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Clyde McLemore.
Good evening, Council. First of all, I want to say I had a little illness last month, and I know we was here about a month ago, and we was talking about the fire department and the paramedics. And I don't know if it was just my name or what, but I want to applaud the Zion Fire Department for being so direct and coming straight to my house and getting me to the hospital at the time, to where I was able to stop the stroke and just take what they did, because I didn't even want to go to Victory Hospital, so I was telling the ambulance people I'll drive myself to the hospital. They looked at my face and said, "Oh no, you're not driving yourself." So I just want to commend our fire department, our paramedics that came on June 1st to my house, and thanks for saving my life, you know. But I just wanted to say that because last time I came, I was late, so I didn't get a chance to say that. But I wanted to go on record and say that. I'm here.
Glad to see you're on the mend, Clyde.
I'm here, as you know, I'm no longer on social media, so a lot of y'all don't get a chance to see me or stuff like that. You hear me. I kind of grew up a little bit, man. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, Salem Food and Black Lives Matter chapter, Lake County chapter, are doing the end of the summer block party on August 24th, 2019, from 2 to 6. It was a smash last year. We blocked off Galilee all the way over by the police department. It was great, no problems. This is a way that we have a business owner want to give back to the community. So we want to do it again this Saturday on August 24th. And I'm coming in time enough so we can put it on our calendars. And Mayor, I want to ask you to come this year. You know, just shake the hands of some of the citizens that's going to be out there. He's going to buy some jumping houses and stuff like that. Black Lives Matter is going to get backpacks and school supplies, which we asking for. If you like to donate some, let us know. We want to give back, you know, so they can go to school and have a successful year. We also want to know, I just talked to the fire chief and the police chief. We'd like to have a squad car out there and a fire truck so the kids, I understand if it's a fire, the truck got to go. So we're going to make a space where he can go get out and everything real quick. But we like to have it, you know, they can understand what our first responders do. You know, we got some jumping houses out there. We have a lot of vendors. I just talked to our township supervisor. I got a lot talked to a couple of political people that's going to come through. And this is going to be, I forgot to ask, can we get the horses to block off the street again? That was something I forgot to ask. I got a couple of flyers here, And just want to say, I want everybody to have a safe summer, and come on out to our block party. I mean, we got a business. He don't want no money. He just want everything. He wants to pay for everything, and all we ask for, if you can't come, donate some school supplies to these kids. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I got a couple of flyers. I didn't bring them. I got one for you.
Thank you.
Y'all can touch, please.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. I know the owner of Salem, AJ, I've talked to him, had an opportunity to talk with him several times, and know that he is making an impact in the community where there were issues in that area outside of his store before he took over, and he's been doing a phenomenal job of policing his property and making sure that things stay in order.
And you know what? And Chief could verify this. Sometimes I don't have nothing to do. I go sit in the parking lot just to talk to the kids, so when they come in, they don't have their pants sagging. So we haven't had many trouble up there like we used to. So, you know, I mean, I'm not no police officer, but I'd rather, see if I can intervene on stuff that don't happen. No, we don't have to call the police, so we don't have to make that a bad spot. Plus, they got some good chicken.
Yes, they do.
Moving on, item number 7, consent agenda.
Approval but not release of closed session minutes of the meeting held on June 18th, 2019 at 7:28 p.m. Approval of a regular meeting held on July 2nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. Bills, vouchers 132500 through 132612, drawn on Huntington National Bank, total $358,100.92.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second?
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fryerson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Holmes?
Aye.
Mayor McKinney?
Aye. Item number 8, considering passing ordinances follows. 8A, making appropriations for the City of Zion fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2019 and ending April 30th, 2020 per Administrator Nabel.
Thank you, Mayor Commissioners. I will not make you listen to my whole spiel again, so I'll just make a recommendation to approve the appropriation ordinance in the amount of $42,228,966 as presented.
Is there a motion to accept?
I'll move to accept the appropriations for City of Zion fiscal year, May 1, 2019, ending April 30th, 2020.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fryerson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Holmes?
Aye.
Mayor McKinney?
Aye. Item 8B, to renew lease of the unimproved 29th Street right-of-way and unimproved city property totaling 324 square feet for additional parking per Director Ianson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Reina purchased the building, did meet the minimum parking standards. He requested a lease portion of the unimproved 29th Street right-of-way. This was an annual renewal. Staff recommends approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fryerson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Holmes?
Aye.
Mayor McKinney?
Aye. Item number 9, discussion, authorization, and approval. 9A, consider approving budget for fiscal year May 1st through 2019 through April 30th, 2020 per Administrator Nabel.
Thank you again, Mayor and Commissioners. You have before you the budget, which is a lot more detail than what's in the appropriation ordinance. It's line by line with variances from last year's budget with an explanation, where it's significant for the reasons. Basically, the process was, like I said, we've been working on this since December. We knew we were going to be facing a deficit, a significant deficit if we didn't do something. We negotiated with all of our unions. And I also met with every department head individually. We went through line by line looked at historical actuals, historical budgets, prior year actuals, looked at what was included in there, whether it needed to go up, down. Everyone was very conscious of our financial decision to make sure that we had a responsible budget and responsible use of the public funds here. I covered some of the major items, but basically your first 2 pages of the budget are all the revenue line items. The first 2 items there are what I was talking about. When you look at the general property tax, the general property tax pension line items, you'll see that the general property tax is actually going down $105,000. That's what we have to work with for general operations. The general property tax, the pension though, went up $361,000. So that's what I was talking about with the additional contribution from the levies. Other items went up and down throughout the year, or for the budget. Income tax, sales tax, replacement taxes being some of our biggest other sources of revenue, as well as the host fees from the landfill. That is budgeted to go up by about $300,000. That's due to the host fee agreement that we have with them for annexation, siting, that we're anticipated to collect. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot of major changes. Going through the rest of it, like I said, every department was pretty flat overall, except for the pension impacts. We do have some items that we have some significant repairs on. In the fire department, we have a ladder truck that's pretty old, but it's a $1.5 million piece of equipment. If we replace, we're putting $50,000 of body work into it to make it last as long as we can. We also have to do some frame replacement on an engine, which is a kind of a significant amount. But again, it's much better than replacing the pieces of equipment. So all of this basically goes through, all the general fund items basically go through page 14 of 23. The remaining pages are all of our other city funds. So basically when we levy for street and bridge, we levy for liability insurance, we levy for IMRF, Social Security, we're required accounting-wise to maintain separate funds tracking that money coming in. All we do is we show it coming in, and then it gets transferred over to basically the general fund to cover, we have fire and rescue levies totaling about $900,000. Well, that doesn't even touch the budget for equipment, salary, staff of the fire department. But we have to track that separately. So a lot of the funds are just ins and outs of property tax levies and transfers. We have our TIF budgets in here as well. That's just for each of our TIF districts, we're required to have a separate budget for it. A lot of that is driven by the tax increment, or the incremental property taxes that come into that fund that's available for reinvestment, as well as opportunities for reinvestment or development. So we might get $300,000 of taxes in from a TIF district. Again, you might need a couple of years of that to accumulate before you have incentives available, or you need to have a developer interested before you can, put anything into site improvements to try and develop that area. So a lot of the TIF amounts are just earmarks, basically saying if we have something come up, it'll go through the process to the TIF commission, it'll come to council for approval, but we earmark funds for incentives should something come up. If not, that'll accumulate for projects down the road. The other big fund that we have in here is the water and sewer fund. So a lot of that's just, again, we try to keep that under control to a degree. Most of that's, salary driven again, tools, parts, repairs and maintenance. The biggest expense in there is the purchase of water from the Lake County Public Water District, as well as you'll see a distribution system. This is on page 19 and 20. Those total about $2 million of that fund. We purchase the water, goes through our systems to bill to the residents, but we also have to pay a significant portion of a bond issue that they have. We had them come to actually do a presentation on that. They had to do a lot of repairs on the intake pipe that goes out to Lake Michigan. They pass through all of those costs, those debt costs to us as their customer. So that's a big portion of this. We do have an item in here where the revenue is increased. I showed revenue increasing by about $900,000, and also an infrastructure line item for $900,000. That's something that we're probably going to be talking about to see if there's a debt service charge to implement potentially that would be reinvested into infrastructure. Did we hit over 40 main breaks? 41 main breaks this past winter. We have a significant, probably 3/4 of our water main infrastructure that's 70 years old or older.
28% is 1926.
Yeah. So 28% of our water infrastructure is from the 20s, 1920s, 100-year-old. So that's going to continue to break, pop, erode, causing a lot of materials, a lot of, we had one, it was a $160,000 project for a manhole that bottomed out and we had to replace. If we were maintaining our infrastructure properly, again, something that we deferred doing in the past, we're going to have to address this. This is just budget only. It's not saying that we're implementing that charge. There'll be discussions. There'll have to be resolutions, approval of that. If we don't do that, if it's decided against that, obviously that would affect our infrastructure spend as well. But we can put it in here to be conservative and always adjust it later rather than trying to adjust it up. So I wanted to get that in here again because this is also what we build the appropriation ordinance off of. So I wanted to make sure that that was built in as a potential expense if we decide to do those infrastructure projects. So those are the big items there. The rest of the funds that you go through are, a lot of them are debt service, our bond issues, things like that, the principal and interest on those items. Nothing really majorly significant there. Like I said, this was all put together by the department heads, very fiscally conservative, and I know it's a lot of information compiled and for you to look at there, but we've been talking about this for months, so hopefully nothing surprising. But I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
I have 2 questions. So, first of all, Dave, thank you for the hard work you've done in putting this stuff together. We had at least a 1.5, maybe 1.6 hole we had to plug, and thanks for working with all of our department heads, and thanks to all of our department heads and all of our employees for the concessions made so that we have a budget before us. One of the recommendations that you sent to us, David, had to do with the deficit. This is a deficit budget. So we're carrying over about $644,000 from last year.
644,000 deficit balance, correct.
From last year. And you're also recommending that we maintain that same amount, about 628 deficit, and not transfer the 1.2 million from water and sewer fund. Reduce that by about 400,000.
Well, we have a couple options. Like I said, when we put the budget together, it was basically like a starting, same as last year, which included a water fund transfer that's built into here as well. We're showing about a net of $400,000 net income with that transfer. So we basically have 3 options. One is we reduce that $1.2 million transfer down to $800,000, take it to a zero net income, but reduce the amount that we rely on the water fund now. The second option is we do have a $600,000 deficit in the general fund starting. We leave the $400,000 or a portion thereof to dig ourselves out of the hole so that we're more self-sustaining in the general fund going forward. Another option that actually Commissioner Frierson brought up to me, which I thought was a good idea, was investing that $400,000, and I'll explain a little more detail, but investing that $400,000 into the unfunded pension liabilities so that the minimum required that we have to levy every year stops growing at such a drastic pace, potentially levels off, in the future reduces, so that we quit eroding our general fund property tax base with increased pension funds. I like the option personally. It invests back into us. It gives us a return. on investment. If we do the $400,000 now, it's not really addressing the issue. It's not putting us in a position to get ahead down the road. I kind of look at it like, I always explain the unfunded pension stuff like credit cards, because everyone understands credit cards. You might have a credit card balance and the minimum payment's $100, but the interest on it might be $150. Okay, you make your minimum of $100 payment, your balance still went up $50, and now your minimum payment next month is $110 instead of $100. You don't dig out of that hole until you start putting, even if it's $25, $50 more towards a month towards that bill. This is putting in $25, $50 a month more towards that bill to dig us out of that hole. It's not a fun option. My recommendation would also be that we wait until maybe March, towards the end of the fiscal year, to actually do that, to make sure we get through most of the fiscal year, no budget surprises. Then you put that money into pension funds. It'll still factor in when they do their actuarial calculations, because it'll still be sitting in the fund, and it'll help get us ahead for the next levy. So unless there's other options that you thought of, those are the three I'm kind of looking at, looking for direction on how we want to. I mean, we could approve the budget and then still decide what to do with that during the year.
Yeah, I guess I'd like some input from Director Roberts also on using the water and sewer fund balance to offset some of these expenses here. I guess I'm leaning more towards let's leave as much money in that fund as we can, because of, I mean, if we have another cold winter like we had before, another 40 plus water main breaks, it's going to get into the water and sewer fund pretty dramatically.
Well, I'm all for keeping as much money as I can. But I do understand what, we're looking at this as a whole. So, I mean, we have to deal with what we can. You can never predict what's going to happen out there. I've been stressing on that we do have 28% of our water main is 1926. Overall, the water main that's underground is probably 60% is probably 80 or 50 plus year in that range. Mm-hmm. Will it go? It's I don't have that answer. Most of the repairs we're doing in-house. I know other communities are dealing with a lot of it in Chicago. So if you're asking me, should we keep the money or give it? I honestly really couldn't tell you which way to go.
Well,
I would love to have it because we definitely need to start addressing a lot of these issues. We have not just infrastructure issues, we have equipment issues within public works. But if that stuff has to delay down to keep the city solvent, then I think that's the route we should go.
Well, what I read, your initial recommendation, I mean, out of those options, your recommendation was that we transfer less from the water and sewer fund, which means we'd be carrying over another deficit of $628,000.
We would.
So what's the downside of carrying over that deficit another year?
I mean, the money spent is already
obvious, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you're just maintaining that deficit. Basically, other funds owe the general fund money because they've covered that amount. The money spent, it's in the hole. I mean, like Director Roberts said, any decision we make, it's going to benefit one area, and benefits even kind of a strong word. It'll sustain one area at the expense of somewhere else, until we can buy time for the nuclear, the cultivation center, potential home rule, recovery of the sales income tax. We're buying time still. But that's why I need kind of council input on which direction, because they're all equal options of an equal need. And like I said, we can always make that decision. We could always just leave it as is now, and we could make that decision and have more discussions about it.
We could approve this budget as is with the $228,000 deficit, and then at a later time, if we want to make an adjustment, we can.
Right. I mean, we can always decide later in the fiscal year to only transfer, maybe something comes through or budget comes in higher than expected, or we get some other savings somewhere, we might not need to transfer the full amount. Or we can decide to put the funds in pension and have that discussion at a later time. The budget's a guideline. It's not a strict. It's just more letting us know what we have there, what we're doing. The more important stuff is the operational line items than that decision. But I want to make sure we have the discussion.
Okay, thanks. That's all my questions.
So in adopting assuming we adopt the budget, we should be able to see month to month how we are doing in terms of the recovery.
Yeah, what I can
assuming we have a recovery.
Yeah, what I'll do at this point is we enter this into the system, and then we can generate reports with budget to actuals for line items. We could put those in with the consent agenda for your review on a monthly basis. We couldn't do that until we had a budget, of course. So,
David, I just want to circle back to the service charge on the water project.
Yes.
Okay.
The 100.
So the
or in Fund 40.
The 900.
Yes.
$1,000. So that, can you just briefly explain how the debt service charge would work? How people might see that if we implement that project, and what that would do is, if I understand correctly, by breaking that out as a separate cost, it frees up funding in the water fund for infrastructure in an equivalent amount.
Basically, what we've done over the past, since they really implemented the bond issue at the water fund, or the Lake County Water District.
And I'll take responsibility for part of that because I was on the board at the time.
It had to be done. I mean, we didn't want
we had to.
The options are the intake pipe buckles because there's no support underneath it.
Exactly, yeah.
Much bigger issue. But they had to issue debt to repair that, and we bear about 70 to 80% of that cost as their primary customer. We've been able to kind of absorb that in our operations,
right?
With the existing rates, but it's been costs have increased, and it's also been at the detriment of not funding infrastructure projects. So when this first went through, I think Winthrop Harbor, they implemented a debt service fee on their bills. I want to say it's like $24 a quarter to cover their share, because they're a customer of the water district as well.
Right.
Their share of the debt service, we did not do that. We basically tried to absorb it as long as we can. We can't do that anymore. So the idea would be that we take the cost of that principal and interest, put it as a debt service fee on the water bill, and then as that debt service was paid off, that fee go away.
Right.
If they need to do more bond issues, but you leave the water rate alone, and then you separate out the debt piece. So you can say, this is the cost of our operations of our system in the water rate, and this is the cost of debt, and it goes up or down based on the debt that's issued.
Right.
But like I said, I want to make sure that if something like that's going to be implemented, it goes to infrastructure that we've deferred off by absorbing that debt up to this point.
Right.
So that's why I increased the infrastructure, the water main projects by that same amount. Make sure that if adopted, and like I said, when we get to that point, I'll put together a whole proposal on kind of what the return on that is, what the cost, what the impact to the house per household will be, all that stuff. So by adopting the budget, you're not saying we're implementing a fee. That's a whole separate process. But I at least wanted to have the discussion of how we're looking to address the infrastructure needs.
Right.
They have other projects they're wanting to do that debt service will not, it's going to increase.
My understanding is that the project that they did was for 20 saddles on the pipe, basically supporting the pipe, and I think they needed to do 40
right.
to address the entire pipe.
Right.
20 was the primary crucial need where the highest risk was.
Right.
So I'd expect that they're going to continue to.
Yeah, depending on the lake bed conditions. It's been a couple of years since I was on the board, but the erosion on the south side of the intake pipe And I remember I still have a copy of the survey video. Basically, it declines like a good 12 feet on the south side of the pipeline. They call it the abyss. But the original project proposals for the bents for the support system, I think, was originally 90 bents for the entire project. But it's basically we decided to do it in phases because we didn't want to increase the cost to the customers, which is basically Zion, Winthrop Harbor, and the state park. But if they're looking at additional bents over the next few years beyond what was just put in, then that's probably because of the lake conditions. That's what's happening there. And Lake Michigan will not wait for us.
Again, it's not something we can say no to.
Exactly.
It has to be done, but at the same time, we have no real control over them passing through the cost to us.
Right.
So we're assuming that debt that when they issue, we're assuming 80% of that debt when they issue it, and they bill us for that monthly.
Right.
So have we been in discussion with them to understand what that next phase looks like? And so, or is that 900 going to? That's the expected debt service.
That's the annual debt service currently.
Got it.
If they decide before this debt service is paid off to do a phase 2, there's going to be additional debt that we're going to be paying on a monthly basis, at which point that fee might have to be addressed again.
I have a meeting at the end of this month with them, and that is one of the topics they want to talk about. It's future projects. I'm assuming it's continuation.
I think the other factor in this is when is our contract with the water district, current contract, when is that supposed to expire?
2025.
Okay. Because I know one of the limiting factors in the bond issuance for the project was the length of our current contract.
Yes. They can't go beyond the current.
They can't go beyond the current
Because
contract.
the Lake County Public Water District is basically pledging the revenue
That
we provide.
During the
towards
length of
their
our
debt
contract.
service.
Right.
So you wouldn't get a bond underwriter to say, I'll give you a 20-year bond.
When your contract ends in
contract.
15 years,
Right.
yeah. So,
So I think I lost some of it in the discussion. So you talked about the 41 main breaks for, I'm assuming that's 2018, 2019?
Yes.
But that 900 would not go towards repair for those breaks.
No, this is actually replacing either slip lining or actual main replacements of some of that 100-year-old main to get it updated to prevent future breaks, to also address, we do have a significant amount of water loss in the system, micro cracks throughout the infrastructure that seeps through that you can't get on a leak detection. That's just a matter of time before it kind of undermines the system, undermines the lines. We need to get in and start replacing.
So do we greenlight those projects, or does the Reclamation District greenlight those?
Those are our
This is Our
projects.
distribution system.
yeah.
IEPA is wanting us to get down to 10% in allowable leakage. Currently, this year, we have been averaging anywhere between 18 and 20%. A lot of that is due to the breaks, but then again, a lot of it, we're only going to be able to find out through the leak detection, which we're planning on doing this fall. So, just to give you kind of a cost, I'm looking at just 2 blocks replacement of a 6-inch main water main. The current price, estimated price on that is right around $650,000 to $700,000.
That's what I was.
That's just 2 blocks.
But ultimately, I mean, long term, it'll save some money too, because 20% of the water, if there's 20% water loss, we're getting billed for that by the public water district. It's going into our lines, but we're not able to bill anyone for that. It's lost in the system. So if you get that down, that's basically a 10% cut. If you get that down to 10%, that's a 10% cut in our purchase of water. That compounds over time as well. So it's not only stopping the existing breaks to service issues to residents, businesses, things like that, but it's, again, that gets us a return over time by replacing those mains.
Good questions. I also note, Administrator Nabel, that we continue to work with some of our state reps in order to find money from the capital bill that was just passed. We continue to have meetings and set up meetings with some of our state officials to make sure that we do get some money to be able to help us with some of the infrastructure repair that is much needed in our city.
I do have two items, minor items, but if I could direct to page 8 of the budget. There's two items that, in talking with Chief Henderson, I have understated on here. Middle of the page, there's non-lethal weapon costs, which I have budgeted for $4,650. I would like to change that to $5,750. I excluded an item in the total that I basically double removed an item, so we have to add that back. So $4,650 on non-lethal weapon costs going to $5,750, and then just a little further down, about 6 lines up from the bottom of the page under other equipment, $61,220. I'd like to adjust up to $65,720. That's actually for some maintenance on basically like infrastructure, server, power supply, Vertiv. I looked up to that, but it's some of our IT infrastructure that I didn't have included in there. So total, we're looking at about a $6,000 increase in there, but I want to let you know that when I do the final budget, I'll have those items adjusted, and it's different than what's here.
May I ask, what are non-lethal weapons?
Excuse me. Those include tasers, beanbag rounds, things like that.
Any other questions or comments?
What does that 10 million amount change to with the changes? I don't have my calculator.
Yeah, I mean, the 10,046,000 total would go up by about $5,000, $6,000. Like I said, just once I do the final, I just didn't want there to be any questions on the differences from what was presented here.
Among the various options that you presented to us, I think I'd like to make a motion that we accept this budget as is, with the changes you just made, knowing that we could make adjustments in the future if we had other income sources. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fryerson? Aye. Commissioner McDowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Holmes?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 10, departmental commentary. Director Ironson.
On August 3rd, we're having our second annual Zion Cleanup Days. Staff is teaming up with volunteers in the community to help clean up the neighborhoods. We're also going to set up a drop point on 27th and Galilee for electronic recycling and tires. So it'll be from 8 to 12 on August 3rd.
8 to 12 on August 3rd. And how are we getting that information out to our citizens? I know we had close to 150 volunteers last year with the event, and our hope this year is to get more citizens involved with participation in the event.
Besides going through Cubs, we're doing social media and just word of mouth.
Just let Gibby know.
We'll also probably put in the happenings on the back page as we get closer.
Okay. I know we've got a meeting set up at some point to discuss that more, and probably to employ more people in our community. I know that was one of the things during going house to house during campaigns. There are more people that really want to get involved with our efforts to help keep our city beautiful. Is that the only announcement with the building department, Director Ironson?
I'm sorry.
Is that the only comment for just a cleanup day? Director Roberts, anything?
I have nothing, sir.
You have a lot.
I've done a whole lot of speaking already.
You know, I've got to tell you this. I did get a couple of calls this week from citizens calling to say that they appreciated the patching going on different road systems. I know a lot of times our commissioners, our directors, we get beat up by comments about what we're not doing. So it's nice to get the calls to know that people are recognizing that your crews and our crews are out doing what we can to improve the city given our budget constraints.
Which
Administrator.
that contract will finish up hopefully tomorrow. We did do some add-ons to that, including a couple of subdivisions. The contractor had to pull off, that's why you haven't seen him in the last couple of days, for another project, and then he's scheduled to come back tomorrow or Friday. Finish up. He's only got 1 day left here.
I've also noticed there's some work going on 29th Avenue, like something is being installed.
That's the Verizon, new Verizon fiber optic cable.
All right.
That'll be going down Sheridan, 29th, up to Lewis, and then out 21st.
Administrator Nabel.
I've monopolized enough.
You've had enough.
Don't hear from me
All right.
anymore.
Just wanted to make sure. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I appreciate you including me, but I got everything I wanted covered.
Chief Lewis.
So everybody's probably aware we're about to hit some of the hottest days we've seen in many years. They're talking about heat indexes above 100 degrees. So last year, or actually earlier this winter with the cold weather, the city adopted a policy for cooling and warming centers. And so part of that plan includes, I believe it's 4 centers. It's Christian Assembly of God, the Zion Library, City Hall, and the Zion Leisure Center. We're also included that they've thrown in the Zion Township and the Zion PD's open their center to be a heat or a cooling center as well. So part of that plan asked for a consensus between officials that are listed on the plan to say, yes, we need to open the center using various matrices to find a need. So we've got that consensus. So tomorrow you'll see some advertisements going out through social media, typically on Facebook. You'll probably see it on Nextdoor, a couple other places, that those places I've just mentioned will be open during normal operating hours only. So they're not all 24-hour centers. They're only operating at the administrator's permission during operating hours, but public's available to go in there, cool off, and that's that part of it. The second part of it, with this hot weather, don't take it for granted. People are working outside, they think they can handle it, and the heat and these temperatures will get to you pretty quickly. And as much as I think it's the dumbest thing in the world, don't forget your kids in the back seat. You know, you see advertisements now for ladies to put your purse in the back seat so you don't forget your kids in the back seat. Why you would forget your kids back there, but remember your purse is back there is beyond me. But kids don't handle cars very well, especially if the windows are up. Even if they're cracked a little bit, their car gets extremely hot extremely quickly with the sun beating through in this weather, and it doesn't take long enough. The same goes for pets. You know, nobody should be in a car without the air conditioning running, windows open, and driving down the road during this hot weather. So drink lots of fluids and be careful out there.
Thank you for that, Chief Lewis. I was going to say kids and pets, as many tragedies as we have across the country with those items that you talked about. It's amazing that you can turn on the news and still hear that a young child has died because of negligence or pet, for those that have four-legged kids, which I do. So thank you for that. Chief Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing briefly, just to dovetail with what Mr. McLemore said. That is an excellent event. I encourage many of you can come on out and support that on August 24th. It's, I think, to be our 3rd year. Every year, AJ, the business owner there, has just pumped more into it. It's become a real focal point and point of the summer. That is in our priority area that I explained to the council that we were starting at the last council meeting. And so we'll have our newly deployed officers there, in addition to explain to the community our new initiative in that area.
All right. The only thing that I have, just a couple of quick items. We are about ready to close on our ring deal. We've been talking about that for quite some time, about working with different taxing bodies to be able to support getting the ring camera for about 200 ring cameras in our community. We've received commitments from enough people that we'll be able to go forward with the project. And as we get more information from Ring. They will have a presentation here at City Hall to be able to talk about how to enroll in the program and the benefits for it, not only for the community, but to be able to assist our police department with this, which is short-staffed. In addition to that, this meeting we were supposed to have on our agenda, the Land Bank was going to make a presentation. There was a change in their program, so we're going to reschedule that. I'm scheduled to meet with them, I think, in about a week or so as the board of directors, and we will have a presentation at some point about the land bank and the merits it offers the city of Zion in dealing with dilapidated and abandoned buildings. Yes.
One quick item that I forgot about, just as a matter of record.
TikTok.
I just want to, in regards to the public hearing, just so the public knows, we were required to put notices in the paper about the appropriation ordinance and have the appropriation ordinance on file with the clerk for review for 10 days. All notices were filed in accordance with the law. I just wanted to make sure that that was on record as part of the public hearing. Thank you.
All right. Item number 11, announcement, August 6th, 7 p.m., Zion City Council meeting. August 20th, 6:15 Zion Township Board meeting, and 7 p.m. on August 20th, Zion City Council meeting. Also, which was probably announced at our township meeting, there's going to be a Zion Together Day, which starts on August 1st. Any of the commissioners care to give out the information on that? It's going to be a host of events involving some of our youth. There's going to be a talent show. Some of our young men in the community that really believe in our community. With the high school, they've graduated now. They have put on a program, or they're putting on a program to get people in their neighborhoods to get out and talk more to one another, do more things, to share information about themselves, so that we can have essentially our own neighborhood watches in our communities, and getting people out of their houses. It's amazing. If you talk to people, you might find out that the person that lives 2 doors over from you that you never talk to, you've known each other for maybe 20 or 30 years, or lived next to each other in another city, which has happened. So August 1st through 3rd, I know that will be on our township website. It's called Zion Together. That will be in conjunction with the cleanup day and recycling, which will have all that information out on our website. Item number 12, closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120-2, open meetings for the discussion of personnel. You're welcome to stay. We'll be back, but if you don't want to stay, feel free to leave. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fryerson? Aye. Commissioner Dell? Aye. Commissioner Fisher?
All right.
Commissioner Holmes? Aye. Chairman Kowalski?
Aye.
Have it on the retrograde.
That was it.